So, Hunzi, I know that you are not only a fan of this man, but a stalker, because when we were talking prior to coming on air tonight, you told me that you've been following Tracii Guns on various social media platforms, most of which I don't even know, since the year dot. So you're very excited to welcome Tracii Guns to HoJo and Hunssy's Hard Rock House. And I'll let you say hello, but don't do it in a giggly girly fashion.
Can I just point out it's not stalking, it's following.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm very selective in who I follow. And I like Tracy's content. I like what he posts. I like what he talks about because it's not what you'd expect. So, as much as I am a fan of his music, I'm also a fan of his social media presence and how he portrays himself on platforms that are easily you can fall into a trap and be a cunt.
Have you sufficiently blushed there, Tracii, at that intro?
Yeah, that was heartfelt. That feels good. I'm not going to lie. I've been called an acquired taste by others, and I much prefer this.
You create all your content yourself. You haven't got like a my social media team. You haven't got one of them. You just, it clearly is done by you.
It's social media, and I've always taken it as that. Even when I was in Brides of Destruction with Nikki Sixx and Scott in London, that's when MySpace was fading out and Facebook was starting. And Nikki and I had already been on this AOL music message board thing, which is very personal. There was no paid ads. There was no boosting your products and stuff like that. So we kind of entered the social media world completely innocent. Hey, this is an opportunity to reach out to people and kind of be yourself. And I had a girlfriend recently. She kept saying she was going to have this media company post her content on a schedule, and she was on there posting her fucking dog, so I just think it's different for everybody. Me, I'm a bit combative in a way, a lot of fucked up shit going on, and I'm not passive aggressive about it. I'm very aggressive about it when I need to be, because if people don't speak up, man, it's just nothing's going to change.
So Tracii, you are one of the guys who everybody knows was right in the heart of that whole really influential Sunset Strip scene of the mid to late 80s. You've got amazing stories about your relationship with Izzy Stradlin. You went to school with Slash. You knew all those guys. When that all started blowing up at the time, did you have any idea that it was going to be a thing? Those kind of little scenes were going on in every major city, in every country where rock music was played. And of course, the music business was in LA, but even so, there was no divine right for the LA bands to become the things that they became. How was it to be in that scene when you were such a kid?
Yeah, I was a kid, really younger than all my peers. But I knew that all these guys were special people. And it's not to say that they're more special than the guys in Seduce from Michigan or whoever, Cinderella, for example. But I will tell you what the difference is. I know the guys from Poison. I know guys from Dangerous Toys. I know Richard Marx. I know people from all over the world. The thing about coming out of Hollywood is if you're not a super snotty, intelligent, resilient person who has a very high sarcasm radar, you ain't going to make it here. If you can't laugh at yourself and if you can't punch somebody's teeth out at the same time, it's not going to happen for you. You have to know when people are taking advantage. At the same time, you have to know the right sucker to take advantage of. That's a very crude way of putting it. But all those guys that loaded in all those bands' equipment and tuned their guitars and drove them to get Jack in the Box and McDonald's in the middle of the night and all this stuff. Without those people, without the support of our friends, we would have been the most fragile little snowflakes in the world. All the bands in the whole scene, we all had our little posse, and that posse worked for all the bands. And when I say worked, they didn't get paid. Nobody was making any money. So Kerrang was a great example of amplifying what was going on here back then by recognizing the recklessness of like Faster Pussycat and specifically Guns N' Roses. They went over there first, well before LA Guns did. Bigger impact than even Van Halen. And me and you talked about Van Halen last thing. But it was at that time, we were misogynists. And I'm just going to be really honest about it because that was the culture. Women at that time would do anything to be with any guy in any of those LA bands. So talk about an ego stroke. It's the most unhealthy ego stroke you could ever get because then you just expect it, your whole life. But such a different culture. But the question is like, did I know? And I knew because the few bands like us and Poison and Jane's Addiction, Chili Peppers, Motley Crue, Wasp, we were in the news locally. And so when you're in the news locally, that means that the news people have gone to your shows. That means that they know who you are and they're enjoying it and they're becoming part of it. And that's a culture thing. So my grandma here in this house, I'd get up, I'd be 18 years old, 19 years old. They were just talking about you on the morning news, you and CeCe DeVille and Dennis Chick from this band and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I just took it for granted because I was so young and dumb.
The ones that didn't make it, or they're just not good enough as bands.
So, you have a group of guys that were probably really talented. Like I brought up Dennis Chick. He's virtually unknown to the masses, Eddie Van Halen type guitar player.
Yeah.
Amazing. George Lynch style kind of guy. He didn't get big because he never had the right band, and he probably, as far as I know, he was smart enough to get a really good career. So, you have that type of thing. But then you have bands that were all bravado and no talent. We had a group of people here called the Water Buffaloes, the Royal Order of the Water Buffaloes. That's where Nicky Beat came from, our original drummer. Higher up in the Water Buffaloes, and LA Guns was associated with the Water Buffaloes, even though we weren't that old. We were a younger band. Motley Crue wasn't in there either. She kind of made a movie about how ridiculous these people were. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever known, and she's an artist. So no, you weren't going to have the bands that were dead serious, the originals creating the scene. She wasn't going to have any part of that. It was odd that Faster Pussycat was in there. That might have been the balance of the movie, I suppose. I don't really know. Maybe they did say some ridiculous things back then. I don't remember now. But the movie was intended to put a light on this ridiculous scene. That's the only way I can think of it, because I was very close with Penelope for a while. I was dating her daughter, when I was like 19 years old.
HoJo and I were very interested and very keen to find out what happened to Wet Cherry.
What?
Do you not remember the band Wet Cherry from the Decline of Western Civilization? I can't believe
I don't remember.
I can't believe it.
Go and remind yourself, it's hilarious.
It's kind of sad because I don't know if he's a friend, but a guy that did a lot of work for LA Guns during a very pathetic period we had, mid-2000s, this guy Gabe Reed. He was in a band, and he's the guy that had the black and white hair.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, remember.
Oh, yeah.
And he comes off as this level 2 autism. Are you okay, dude? And anyways, he lied that he was an attorney, and he fought some cases for me that we actually won, but it wasn't on the merit of his law degree. He had no law degree. Then he fancied himself as a promoter, and he took fucking Kiss down to fucking Mexico, and he didn't pay anybody. It's crazy. And then he gets back to the States, and then I hear the FBI caught up to him and arrested him, threw him in jail. I don't remember exactly what it was even for, but the next I heard from him, I got an email. I need you to write an email for me as a character witness. I'm like, no, because I'm not going to lie for you. That's what ended up happening with that guy. And
wouldn't it be great to go back and find all those characters that were in that film? Find out what they're doing now.
It's been a while, but I'm sure you can find him. He's not in jail. But I do know Sean Duncan, the drummer from Odin, is in LA Guns now.
This much I know. As soon as I saw his face, I went, Odin.
Yeah.
Odin. Talking of them, what was Bill Gazzari like?
Oh, what a guy, man. He's a funny guy, really. He always was in costume. I don't know what his home life was like, but he was always at Gazzari. There was like a big room downstairs that had a shower bathroom and a lounge. It was kind of like Shark Island's permanent dressing room. Like that, they were the house band. Yeah. And I would see Bill, because I went there a lot. I played there a lot when I was really kind of young, 15, 16. He was bigger than life, and he always called you by your first name. He always made sure that everybody knew that he knew who they were. He was that kind of guy. Really sweet, just a magnet for women straight off the bus. You know what I mean? Like, if they came off a Greyhound bus the day before, they were at Gazzari's making money doing that thing. I feel like Gazzari's doesn't get talked about enough, man, because what he did was he did a battle of the band. I'm pretty sure every weekend, and it might have been Friday and Saturday nights. You had two horseshoe shaped stages. One was a balcony and one was on the floor. And you could have 6 to 10 bands set up, because you could set up in the corners as well. And a band would play 5 songs, and the next band would play 5 songs. And then through a series of elimination, there'd be a winner. And this went on every weekend. And it was a great opportunity for exposure. That's how Van Halen got discovered. You know, I mean, ultimately, I guess Gene Simmons found them at the Starwood, but they played at Gazzari. The Doors played at Gazzari. So many people came out of Gazzari's. Axl's first gig in LA, before I knew him, before he actually moved to LA, he had a band, I think it was called AXL, with his friend Paul, the guitar player. I can't remember his last name. He was in Guns N' Roses for a minute later. Anyways, I think Izzy booked that gig for them. They came and they played Gazzari's. So like Gazzari's was the place.
Yeah.
The Whiskey was kind of closed for a year. The Troubadour wasn't on the Strip. So like LA Guns really kind of came more out of the Troubadour. And so did Motley Crue. But Gazzari's, that was a really sleazy place. It was fucking sleazy, man. Wet t-shirt contest, the whole thing.
It's different times.
It's different times. Yes, it is.
He must have had fucking terrible taste in music, because he was touting Odin in that film. Sorry, that's...
Well, to be fair, the musicians were all brothers. Their bass, guitar, and drum. They were amazing then. They're amazing now. But I think Randy, you know, like a lot of frontmen, especially then, they're just so full of themselves that it gets in the way of them just singing a great song, you know, and then the whole cheese ball thing happens, and it's like, next.
He had nice butt cheeks, though, didn't he, Tracii?
There you go. That's important. Not as nice as Axl. There's a classic picture of me watching Guns N' Roses at the UCLA frat party. It's so good, because it's like me looking every bit of a 19-year-old.
You're in that photograph.
I'm in the photo. So when you're looking at his ass, look to the left, and I have a black hat on and a full denim. I almost look like I'm in Turbo Negro. To his left, and Slash is right there. And then here's the thing. To his right is my girlfriend, Candy Pearson, who is just a whole story within itself. For me, that photograph is the pinnacle. That is the launching pad. That's the day I met Mick Cripps, you know, to form the new LA Gun. So all the people you see up front are mostly Water Buffalo people, or associated with the Water Buffaloes. And then all the people in the back, they're the fraternity guys that don't know what the hell's going on. Like, what is this guy with his ass hanging out? And that was a magical day. That's an important photo.
It's no secret drugs was a big part of that Sunset Strip. But you were never a part of it, no?
No. I was so close to drugs, it's not even funny. Probably every trip in a car I took with a friend or one of my parents, from the time I was 15 to 22 or 23, there were definitely some form of illegal drugs in their car right next to me, you know, and I didn't know. I'm very slow when it comes to big revelation. Phil always just says that I'm really gullible. He thinks that I'm easily manipulated, and I believe people at face value because I have no reason not to, because it's just the nature of the way my brain works, where, you know, I want to give everybody a chance. And I try to find the good in everybody, and I assume they're good. But when it comes to drugs, I was coming home from a gig in Pasadena, you know, probably, I don't know, like around 2000. And this was when cell phones were a real thing. My dad's calling me. I'm driving home. And I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, Dad, what are you doing? It's 2:30 in the morning. He goes, could you get me some Valium? And I'm like, oh, you having a bad anxiety? You know, my whole family, both sides are anxiety ridden. Right. And that's why all the men on my dad's, they were alcoholics, because that was the only way to deal with that. So I was like, I don't. He goes, you got to be kidding me. Everybody's got Valium. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I didn't even know who to call. But I got really sad. Man, my fucking dad can't function. My mom, on the other hand, is the same thing. She can overfunction or not function.
Right.
you know, which is a whole nother diagnosis. Obviously, we all know what that is. So I think I left the nest when I was like 15 or something, you know, and so I've just always kind of been attracted to my parents. You know, anybody that's like either one of my parents, you know, I'm there, I'm going to fix you. It's never conscious, but they're the same people that have fucked me over and over and over and over again. And I keep allowing them into my life. But that's the balance. You know, I have a good life, but that's the price.
But you were seriously able, when that maelstrom of weirdness is happening all around you, you just went, nah, not for me.
No, I mean, with Chris Webber, who was the original guitarist in Hollywood Rose, we were high school buddies, and he was doing blow all the time. I did coke with him a couple times, but it just always made me feel so weird. The drugs that I've done, it's not a good experience. I have friends that did blow, and it's the greatest thing in the world. They can fuck all night. They can, oh, life is so good. Same with meth. I know guys that for years that I didn't know were doing meth. Fully functioning, overly productive electronics guys, mostly auto mechanics too. So for me, didn't ever have a good experience. I'm very thankful. Even with alcohol, I can have a drink, but after that, I'm done. I feel sick, but I have a unique nervous system. It does things differently than most.
Yeah, but I think you've probably got a unique mentality more than a unique nervous system.
Yeah, I was scared shitless. That's the mentality. Like, I don't want to take that thing that's going to kill me. No.
Well, that's a fine place to be.
Because you must have been around bands and you probably had band members who went on stage and were doing gigs under the influence.
I remember when Steve Riley joined LA Guns, you know, and he was a big pothead. And I told him, I go, I don't care if you smoke pot. Don't smoke pot when we play. You don't smoke pot before rehearsal. Don't smoke weed. Oh, of course not, bro. I'll never do that, right? And of course, there was never a gig that went by. He'd smoke a joint to go fucking sound check. Stoners are like that, whatever. We come off the road, and I wouldn't be in contact with Phil, normally because Phil was going and having fun doing the stuff and experimenting. And I know during Vicious Circle album, he told me that he was like doing mescaline and some heavier stuff. But Phil's a unique individual where he can kind of dabble in something for a couple months. And then, well, that was fun and boring. And now, you know, back to reality here. But there was a time, an early bass player we had just finished a tour and we had an end of tour party in Florida and we had to catch a flight at like 10 a.m. the next day. We're all sitting on the bus and then they're walking the guy out and he sits right in front of me on the table and his fucking lips are blue. I'm like, what happened? Well, you know, everything that came across the table went in one hole and, you know, here we are. But he survived. Wow. We got him on the plane, got him home and stuff like that. So, you know, I seen it. I'm never going to go inside Nikki Sixx's life. It's up to him to tell whatever stories he was. But, you know, we spent some time together when I was younger, you know, after the first LA Guns record, like right around that time. Him and John James, who's our mutual friend, they were doing some bad stuff. And I was fucked up. But I think that Nikki was kind of lonely, I think, at the time. And John was such a cool guy. John actually was Penelope Spears' boyfriend.
Okay.
So we'd sit there. He had this really cool little man cave, like this beautiful house. But in the center of it, it just had one door, and then you could go outside the other side of this very big Gothic couch and the equivalent of a flat screen in 1988 or whatever it was. And we'd sit in there. One of the craziest things I ever saw was, I don't know if they were high or not, but we're sitting there, and there's a big bottle of Jack. And it was nighttime, I remember. And John is bigger than Nikki. You know, he's like 6'7". Hey, you want a shot? And I'm like, yeah, I'll have a shot. Fuck yeah. And he gives it to Nikki. And Nikki's sitting on the other side of him. If you know Nikki, he has a twitch in a way. I mean, he's a very animated face. And he takes this hit off this bottle of Jack. And he just like, wham, like his neck just swung to the left. And I was like, what the fuck was that? He's like, what, dude? I go, your fucking face went like over there. And he's like, it did? And I'm like, yeah, but I'll never forget it. But it was definitely like a direct correlation between the finest sweet taste of Jack Daniels hitting his nervous system somewhere in his face. So like I said, I've been this close to drugs at that time of my life specifically. And there's just no way, man. There's just no fucking. And my girlfriend, Candy, the girl I brought up, she ended up getting hooked on heroin, man. It was horrible. She was my girlfriend and she was a junkie. Crazy.
That's not fun.
I'm not a goody two shoes, but I love that girl so much. I would go in the bathroom and tie her off so she could shoot up.
You did that?
Oh, I did that because she insisted that I do it.
Fucking hell.
You know? And then when she'd run out, I would drive her to downtown LA and she'd disappear for an hour so she could get stuff. I was right in the pit of fucking hell all the time.
When you tell stories like that, here we are 40 years later. Do you recognize the person you were back then? Or are you someone completely different now?
I'm the same person.
You're saying.
When I say that, it's like I've learned a lot of things, of course. Hopefully. I mean, by the time you're almost 60.
So when I start using heroin,
I'm still very vulnerable to people that have emotional problems. I do protect myself from it a lot better, but it doesn't mean I'm still not open-minded to these people's quirks. Maybe it's just because they're not normal and I just love that. You know, I don't know why.
yeah.
And I've gone to therapy about it. And the therapist was always like, well, I mean, you can set boundaries. That's the therapist's terminology of the decade, boundaries.
Maybe you were just put on this earth to help people.
Maybe.
People who need help naturally gravitate to you because they recognize you as someone who's just going to help them.
I'll tell you something that's obvious. I've always had LA Guns, right? It's always been my hobby. That's what I do. But then Contraband, Devil City Angels, Brides of Destruction, Guns N' Roses, all these other things and people that I work with. And then I bail, right? But it always seems to be a great launching pad for other people where I'm able to go home after. It's like I get involved, I feel this, I see the excitement, I see the talent, I see the energy, and then it burns out quickly for me. Great example was when we started Brides of Destruction. Nicky was not in great financial shape. He was at a plateau and there was no Motley Crue.
2002 or something, was it 2002?
Yeah, we started in 2002.
Ginger.
He came out later. Well, he's a classic example, isn't he, of what we're talking about, if you really know Ginger. So let's get through the Brides thing. It's like we do Brides and we have a really great amount of success. And then all of a sudden Motley Crue wants to get back together early. And it's like, yeah, duh. But even during that time, I went and took care of Mick Mars for 2 weeks, you know, before they're getting it all together. And he was in bad shape. And I went over there. He wouldn't let me cook for him. He wouldn't let me do anything for him. He's such a proud little strong man, showing me all his great artillery and guitar gear. And what a cool guy. I remember one day we were watching some documentary style thing. And we're sitting there and I'm like, man, we got to figure this out because you got to go play. And I knew he was fixable. He was depressed. There's my guitar. Go play.
Telling you to go and do the gig.
Yeah. I'm like, that's not the fix. That's not going to make you better. And the Motley Crue thing for me was already so weird because we did Brides. I had written the stuff for the Red, White, and Crew stuff, which I'm not supposed to talk about because I signed an NDA and I really don't give a shit. And then Nicky and I went and played with Vince, which was a really hypocritical, weird thing to do because I don't have any personal thing against anything in Motley Crue, not even Nicky. Now, Nicky's just Nicky, cool, man. I separate the weird relationship we had from the cool shit he did at some point in time. But him and Vince had a really weird thing going on. We were sitting outside rehearsal listening to Vince on the radio. Vince talking about he was going to sue the shit out of Nicky for something. And I was like, oh my God, this is bad. Poor Vince and poor Nick. How did this come to this? 2 weeks later, I'm playing Livewire with Vince and Nicky. I thought to myself, oh, this is fucking great. You know, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as we got in the truck, yeah, you know, Vince is just grin fucking you. He doesn't like anybody. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure Vince likes me. I'm a pretty likable person. You know, you're gullible. And in the end, when I finally started doing my own thing after the Brides, I never wanted to play with another rock star again. Man, okay. That was an emotional roller coaster. That was awesome. Playing Livewire at Download was the fucking sickest thing I've ever done. You know, going on right after Slayer. It was like, sup? Shit like that makes it all worth it. You know, you have moments that are on the World Wide Web now. I can search for Hendrix, I can search for Page, Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, but I can also search for myself and see the things that I've done over the years. I don't know if you know this, Howard, but Howard Johnson's Hotel and Diner here about 2 miles from my house was the pickup spot for bus drivers and bands for 25 years.
I'm taking the credit.
It's all you, man. It's all you.
What we haven't talked about, which we must do, is the fact that we're all around about 60. You're still playing music. You're still writing new music. This is not necessarily the path that your contemporaries have taken. A lot of them will go out and do the cruise stuff and the retro tours, and that's fine. But you're very much a working musician, making a lot of new music and being highly motivated to that. What do you put that down to?
Stupidity. I'm just a fucking idiot. Joking, but I mean, it could seem that it's all for nothing, but it's really for something. Of course, the number one thing is to stay creative. That's the obvious answer. But the other side is I make a lot of fucking money doing it. And I don't make Bruce Springsteen money. And I think that, some people set that as a bar. Well, if you're not Bruce Springsteen, what are you doing this? And, my small LA Guns Incorporated business, it pulls in over $1 million a year. And everybody gets paid and everybody has a nice life. And it's so much fucking fun. All the work and all the drama and all the crazy, weird internet back and forth bullshit between everybody. To finally, for the last 6 years, be content in a family of musicians that is creative and touring and creating good vibes, I hope. All that other shit was worth it. When Phil and I got back together, at that point, my agent, this guy Chuck Bernal, he's like, hey, we got another offer for an LA Guns kind of reunion thing. And I'm like, oh, because at that time, which was 2016, I guess, I could go out and tour, man. And I was making like, 150 grand in my pocket a year. I was like, why would I go to LA Guns? And he goes, well, you want to do this one show? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'll do one show, So that was a test. And then the record deal came right away. And then, all the stuff started flowing. But still, with that agent, he was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to pocket as much money doing this as you would on your own. Oh. So the solution was that I just took Shane, the drummer, and Johnny Martin, that were the guys in my solo band, and put them in LA Guns. Phil was very leery. He thought that I would just fuck off after a year to a band with Glenn Danzig or something. He would sit me down. I know you haven't done everything you want to do. I'm like, well, I don't know what I wanted.
To be fair to him, you have done a shitload of stuff, right? You've worked with Mick Taylor from the Stones. You've worked with Michael Sweet from Striper. It's hardly a surprise that Phil's got a thought of you going, he might fuck off and go and do something else at this point.
Exactly. And I took it as a fair point. And I said, well, it's not an ultimatum, Phil. We have a record offer. This will lead to doubling the size of the audience and doubling the size of the money. And even if it's for one record, what's to lose? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. When I'm playing with Steve, I never talk to him. I just go and I fly in and I get a little bit of money and I feel safe. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Fine. But this is what's on the table. And that was sort of the end of 2016 or 2017. I'm bad with years. And he did a New Year's Eve gig or something in Vegas with Steve Riley. And he just told it. He told Steve, he said, this is my last gig with you. I'm going to go do that. He didn't tell me right away. He told me right around my birthday on January 20th. So he's like, hey, I talked to Steve. I'm like, what did you say? I'm all yours, man. Don't leave me. So I'm not going to leave you, man. And, we've been together 7 or 8 years. And I've done other projects since we've been together. And it hasn't interfered.
Do you ever think to yourself, I'm too old for this shit?
No, I hope I don't ever get to that point. And that's not to say that I'm perfectly fit. I definitely have nerve damage in my shoulder that sometimes, mostly when I'm sitting down, it's really uncomfortable to play. And sometimes the synapse between my brain and my left hand, and if I'm sitting in a certain position, it's like I'm a beginning guitar player. It's really weird. But it's been like that for a long time, maybe 10 years. And it goes away at times. So I really revel in those months where it's like, oh, man, I feel great. But other than that, no. I saw B.B. King playing on his 89th birthday in Vegas and went and hung out with him afterwards. And he's just sitting there. His family was down the hall yelling and screaming at each other. He just looks at me and goes, nothing ever changes, man. Ain't that the truth? And then he died like a year later or something like that. That's really inspirational for someone like me. I have so much fun playing the guitar, and knowing that it's something that you can do till the day you die is just kind of set in my head. I'm going to start getting involved in other stuff though too. Like there's this company Stu Mac that does do-it-yourself guitar amps, and I just agreed today that I would get involved with that company and show people how to build amps and pedals and stuff like that. So, I try to stay involved in the community just as if it was a neighborhood community, all the guitarists and products and fun stuff. There's a lot of other ways to stay involved in the guitar community and keep LA Guns going, bringing ourselves a little bit of glory, and especially the young fans now. They just fucking love it. The rebellious 19-year-old that somehow during the pandemic, they discovered LA Guns. Because when we came out of the pandemic, there was a huge audience shift. Still all the old farts like me are there, but all of a sudden, the first 3-4 rows are kids in leather jackets and hair and singing all the words, which is like the greatest thing that could happen to an old band, is going out there and seeing that brand new excitement. It's another reason to do records, because when you do a record, well, then you got to do videos. Well, then you got to put out singles. Well, then I got to talk to all my friends I haven't talked to in 18 months. That's part of my job. I can at least pretend I have a job, because routine is the thing that keeps us all steady. Being busy is important. It really is. Because if not, I'm going to be sitting on the couch over there, staring at the cat, looking for shit to eat in her fridge all day.
I'm going to let you go. It's been great, and we've really enjoyed chatting with you.
It's been brilliant.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. It's been a laugh. We've had some fun. We've talked about many of the pit stops along the way in your long and illustrious career. And the main thing is that you're still making new music. You're still looking fit and healthy.
Honestly, I'm most comfortable in Europe.
Tracii, all the best with the new record. We all enjoyed it. And thanks again for taking the time.
Okay, man. I'm sure I'll be talking to you both soon.
If you're very unlucky.
Bye.
Bye.